All right, and we'll get started in a couple minutes. For those of you who are just logging in, feel free to use the drop-down button at the top of your screen. You should be able to see the presentation currently. Let me know if you're having any issues. And feel free to chat with me as the presentation goes on. But for right now, let us know what the area of greatest need is for your organization as you join us for the presentation today. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Chris Lloyd, and today we'll be talking about how to apply for a Taproot service grant that will strengthen your organization through pro bono service. As the March deadline approaches, this approximately 45-minute webinar will go through in detail what a service grant is, how it can help your organization, as well as how to submit a competitive application when the deadline arrives. Before we begin, again, I want to make sure that people feel free to use the question and answer functionality here. So feel free to chat with us as we go through the presentation. My colleague Meg and I will do our best to address questions as they come up. We will kind of move through the presentation and do our best to address any questions that you have. For those who are logging in, there is both an audio component as well as screen sharing. Some people say they're just getting a couple folks are saying they're just getting the web streaming of the video, but they aren't seeing the shared screen. So if some folks could confirm that they can see and hear, that would be very helpful as we get started. All right. So I'm just going to send a quick note to all the participants to make sure that they're logging into the call, just to make sure they can hear us. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so I wanted to start out by introducing today's presenters, which includes myself. My name is Chris. I am a program manager here in the Chicago office. I've been with Taproot for about 2 years and have had a chance to work with a lot of really incredible organizations in the Chicago market, and I am joined by my colleague Meg out of Bay Area. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Meg Van Wagner, and as Chris said, I am in the San Francisco office. I have been at Taproot for a little over 2 years now. I actually started in development here, and now I'm really excited to be on a program team doing grant making to all of our wonderful nonprofits here. I'm originally from Minneapolis, so I've had a lot of work in multiple cities across the U.S., and I'm very, very excited to present this webinar with Chris today and helping our nonprofits all across the U.S.
Great. Thanks, Meg.
So our agenda for today, we'll start with a brief introduction of us, of Taproot, and then we'll discuss service grant program in more depth. We will move into factors that we consider for our nonprofit client selection. Sorry if I interchange the word client and grantee. We kind of use them interchangeably here, but we'll go through that selection process with you. We'll talk a little bit about the service grant application itself, and then of course we'll leave some time at the end for questions. Again, you can ask questions throughout using the chat box. We will also spend the last 15 minutes or so on our website showing you the pages we've discussed. That's optional, so you can choose to stay for that if you want.
And I wanted to add one caveat as we begin the presentation today. The primary intended audience for the webinar is organizations that are in the 5 cities in which Taproot operates. So that is Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. area. These are the areas that we primarily serve nonprofits. And I wanted to make sure that as we get started today, we'll go a little bit more into the eligibility criteria, but there's a lot of great learnings about pro bono. But if your organization is in another market, we may or may not be able to work or partner with your organization.
Correct. All right. So at Taproot, our mission is to lead, mobilize, and engage professionals in pro bono service that drives social change. We act on this through 3 programs. Our flagship program, which is what you're all here to participate in today, is called the Service Grant Program. And through that program, we award service grants, which are consulting projects, to organizations. We assemble a team of about 5 to 7 professionals to deliver that project over a course of about 6 months. And of course, we'll talk a lot more about that today. We also have a program called Advisory Services, in which we work with corporations to build and implement their own pro bono programs. While nonprofits have plenty of demand for pro bono, this program helps build the supply of talent. And lastly, our newest program is called Powered by Pro Bono, and our hope is that all nonprofits, no matter what city you're in, will learn how to know to scope, secure, manage, and scale pro bono work, whether it's through Taproot or not, and this program teaches them how. So if through this webinar you realize you don't meet our requirements, we're open definitely to sharing a little bit more about Powered by Pro Bono, and we have another webinar on those practices. So as you can see, through our 3 programs, we've reached an enormous amount of nonprofits through the generous professionals who've donated their time pro bono. So through our programming, we have this dual approach. We lead pro bono efforts locally through our service grant program and inspire them nationally through Powered by Pro Bono as well as advisory services. So Taproot came to be because we saw a solution to a supply and demand opportunity. We saw a lot of strong interest in professionals who wanted to do meaningful work in their community. And then on the flip side, we saw an increased need in the nonprofit sector for capacity building services. However, we knew that we would need some strong processes in place in order to make these 2 needs come together seamlessly. Thus, in our service grant program, we screen our participants, both the nonprofit clients and the pro bono consultants. We have pre-scoped projects. All roles have specific activities and tasks attached. We have tons and tons of tools and resources to aid in the project success, and we offer support throughout the entire process.
Thanks, Meg. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what Taproot does, how we build the pro bono marketplace and our impact in the nonprofit community. And specifically, we're going to go over the service grant program. What is a service grant and how can it impact your organization? So just a quick glance as we get started. At the very basic core, a service grant is about 500 hours of pro bono service that's donated to your organization from a team of 5 expert consultants. The average estimated value of professional service that's delivered through the Taproot Service Grant Program is $50,000. These are 6-month intensive engagements and typically involve about 5 in-person meetings over the life of the project. Otherwise, your team is really working remotely and outside of their typical business hours because they're doing this as pro bono in addition to their current working situation. So that at a very high level is the basic value of what you get out of a service grant. But it's really more than just the service itself, whether you're building a website or building messaging for your marketing operations. There's deep impact, including increasing the capacity of your administrative and operational needs, increased resources, so you don't have to focus as much time as you typically would on some of these operational needs. You can build engagement with additional stakeholders and extend your network by working with the team of 5 partners who are doing pro bono consulting for you. And it's also a great opportunity for organizational development. It's a way to get someone on your team who doesn't have as much management experience to manage potentially their first professional services engagement, or it's a way to build knowledge in a new discipline that you may not have been familiar with in the past. So generally, because of the cross-sector collaboration, we found that there's a lot of cross-learning, ways that organizations can share with business professionals, and then, of course, the ways that nonprofits get to build sophistication in their human resources practices, marketing, IT, or strategy. We always say that it's not about replacing resources, not about doing more with less, but really about expanding the resources that you already have, the people, the money, the time that your organization has to invest in its mission. Pro bono expands all of that.
Thank you, Chris. So we have over 5,000 professionals currently in our network. Highlighting 2 won't even show, close to the whole picture, but it does hint at the quality and commitment that we're bringing to our projects. In fact, only 45% of professionals who apply to be a consultant with us are accepted, so we definitely have a high bar to reach there. And just as we screen our nonprofit grantees, we also put our consultants through an in-depth screening process, which includes an application and resume review, in-person orientation, and then each are interviewed individually by the lead consultant prior to joining a project. So over the course of a project, each consultant will donate 100 hours, so that's a total of anywhere from 500 to 700 hours of pro bono service to your nonprofit. And I just like to point out Ed here in the San Francisco office. He's done 11 projects, which is over 1,000 hours of pro bono work, and he's just one of the many committed individuals that could be working with your organization.
And as you can see, with these 2 individuals, a lot of our consultants do come from leading corporate for-profit institutions. Many are also from small shop boutique organizations. Many are sole proprietors, and then many are also in between opportunities or retired. So it's a really wide range, but no matter who we bring into the network, it's because they have that core expertise that they'd be bringing to the organization, something that they've done for years for their day job.
So moving on to our service grant catalog. As far as practice areas, we have 4 through the service grant program: strategy management, leadership development, and strategic HR, marketing, and technology. So we have 16 service grants among them, and we will talk a little bit more in depth about them. I think Chris is on the strategy management first.
Yeah. So we're just going to go in a little bit more depth about each of these service grants. If you have questions, feel free to raise them as we go through each grant if you have a specific interest in mind. From the beginning, when I was polling everyone, we really did have a wide range of interests today. So I'm going to start with our strategy management practice. We have 5 different services that really touch a couple points within your organization's strategic planning process. So we see the strategic planning process as a 4-step cycle. First, defining your mission and vision, then doing research and getting buy-in among your organization on the direction that you need to go. Third is the actual strategic planning process, and 4 is the implementation of your plan and the monitoring of your results and your success. Of course, after you've done that, it's time to reevaluate your organization's direction and mission and vision after you've done that. Taproot's service grants really fit in well with the 2nd and 4th phase. So the research and build support phase, as well as the implement and monitor phase. So the Strategic Planning Prep grant brings consultants, strategy consultants who help you gain a body of research that really helps you understand your organization's internal and external factors that will affect your success. So doing an environmental scan, doing a SWOT analysis, that builds research that would allow you to go into a strategic planning process with your team and your board. The competitor collaborator analysis also does research to look at the competitive landscape that your organization is operating in. So instead of competitor, I always like to say organizations with overlapping missions. So it's not necessarily about competing with fellow nonprofits, but determining where are their potential partnerships and where are you competing for participants, for space, for funding, and determining how to best operate in the environment that your organization is working. The third grant is our financial analysis grant, which brings a team of finance professionals who can really help your organization evaluate the true cost of programming. This is kind of always the holy grail in the nonprofit sector, determining the true cost of operating and doing business, and helping you develop a model that can help you make decisions about how to scale a program, how to work with a partner, work with a funder to make sure that you understand the actual costs and potentially benefit of doing a particular program. Program measurement is a brand new grant that is in the implement and monitor phase of our projects. I'll go a little bit more in depth on that in a second. And then we also offer a strategic scorecard. The strategic scorecard is a service grant that brings strategy professionals to evaluate your current standing strategic plan and help you develop a framework of metrics and milestones that help you understand how you're performing against that strategic plan. Program measurement is our newest service grant, and we're really excited to offer special opportunities to apply for this grant in a couple of our markets. So you'll want to check with your program manager about that. We'll give information about each program office to contact if you have additional questions. But our program measurement grant is about giving your organization the data that it needs in order to really evaluate your performance and how you're acting on your strategy. It's not a program evaluation per se, but the consultants come and work with your organization to look at one program, develop a logic model, and then determine what data needs to be tracked moving forward into the future. Some of that may be legacy data that your organization has already collected, and then you may discover that new metrics are required in order to really evaluate your success. So they provide you a framework of data to collect moving forward, and then also give you a dashboard that shows your organization's success in real time as you move forward and update the data moving forward.
All right, so I am personally really excited about our leadership development and strategic HR practice. Through these 5 grants, we can really build out, no matter how small your HR department is, there are really great strategies here. So with our HR Capacity Build grant, our consultants will assess 8 different areas of your HR department, which is really great baseline to see where you're at in HR. Further along, we have the performance management, which obviously looks at performance management within your organizations, and I do have a case study that I'll talk about in a second around that. Board recruitment is really great. While at the end of the project, we don't recruit a board member for you, we help set you up strategically to be able to build your board in what aligns with your strategic planning process. And then I am very excited about our newer grants, which we've added in the past couple of years. Pro bono recruitment and volunteer management are both grants which hone in on what you as nonprofits already do well, and that's work with volunteers. So we help you build out your volunteer programs to increase your capacity using your volunteers or recruiting a new pro bono volunteer within your organization. So this case study here is actually a performance management service grant that we recently completed for the California Academy of Sciences here in San Francisco. And if anyone on the phone is not from the Bay Area, I highly recommend you visit the Cal Academy on your next trip out here because it's very, very cool. But their main need for this grant was to retain and develop their newly expanded workforce with competitive compensation and a supportive work environment. Throughout the discovery and finding stages of the project, the consultants came up with a few aspects of Cal Academy's performance management system that could either use improvement or could benefit from building out more or was an important factor as they grew. So things such as goal setting, communications plan, their culture of feedback, as well as appraisal processes. So as you can see by the quote, Rail stated that the deliverables were already making an impact before the consultants had even closed the project. So it'll be exciting to check back in about 6 months, which we do through surveys with all of our grantees to see where they're at now and how they've really implemented and sustained those deliverables. Our marketing practice is definitely by far our most popular among nonprofits. But that also makes it the most competitive. What we love to see from our organizations when asking for these service grants is how they fit one or more of our grants in with their overall marketing strategy. So we have key messages and brand strategy, which really looks at you as an organization, how you talk about yourselves, how your board talks about yourselves, as well as how the community then talks about you, and writes up a brand strategy for your new messaging. Visual identity and brand strategy is then building out your logo and how you use that, those messaging and your brand identity into a new logo. And then annual report and brochure are obviously print projects, and they're similar in the sense that we do have a print-ready brochure annual report to use at the end of the project. So I have a case study here which actually goes through multiple of these. So the Point Reyes National Seashore, excuse me, that's a hard word to say, association, came to us seeking a new visual identity to help their 40-year-old organization raise its public profile. They wanted to help garner support from for the park and its resources. So the old logo, as you can see, it wasn't awful. But it was kind of missing the essence of their brand, such as nature and beauty and the vibrancy of the park. So they came to us for a visual identity and brand strategy service grant, and you can really, with this logo, kind of see and feel their brand. What's really cool actually about this is that this project won the Director's Award for Excellence in Interpretive Media from the Association of Partners for Public Lands. So I think that was a very proud moment for not only Point Reyes, but also our consultants. So then they came to us again and again using this new brand for a brochure as well as a website. And the website also won an award from the Association for Partners for Public Lands. And even though website is technically in our IT practice, which Chris is about to talk about, one could definitely argue it's a huge part of brand identity and marketing strategy. So for us at Taproot, it's fantastic to see that an organization's brand identity has been translated into these different mediums through our project, but really they had a marketing strategy, and we were there, to implement at different points of the way.
Great. Thanks, Meg.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go with that as a segue into the final practice area, which is our information and technology practice, which includes the WordPress website as well as the Salesforce implementation grant. The Salesforce implementation grant works to help your organization implement Salesforce. Salesforce is a constituent relationship management system that a lot of organizations are using now to track their constituents and their donors. So it's a great way to track donations, and some organizations use it to track other constituents as well. And what they do is basically look at the legacy information that you have, your previous way of tracking records, design a new tracking system, and will actually design and migrate the information over to the Salesforce database. The reason that we partner specifically with Salesforce is that the Salesforce Foundation offers the nonprofit starter pack at a very cheap discount, and will offer that to organizations long term at a very cheap price. So we partner with them for this specific service. And then we also, with the website project, work specifically with WordPress, which is a content management platform that makes it very easy for lay people like myself to update information on websites. So you don't necessarily need to be a coder in order to go in and insert a blog post or update a picture or a heading. Something that I should say about our information technology practice is that these projects are extremely competitive compared to the other practices because of the supply of consultants in most of the markets that Taproot operates. So because of limited supply of consultants, oftentimes we have to choose between several great organizations, some of whom have worked with Taproot on a project before. So my recommendation, if you are considering one of these services for the March grant round, that you definitely contact your program manager prior to applying to just get a sense of how competitive it's going to be and if your organization should invest the time in applying this round. So I wanted to take a moment, now that we've looked at the 4 practice areas, to I have the screen up that shows all the projects that we have. Just take a pause to see if there's any questions about the service grants as we've kind of gone over them, just to make sure that we're addressing any questions that you might have. We want to make sure that we're covering all the bases as we go through the project. Meg, there's one question that came through, maybe that you can answer this. Someone is asking which area would cover board development?
Sure. Yeah, that would definitely be leadership development and strategic HR. The board recruitment grant will definitely work with you and your organization on how to build out a strategy to add in board members or board members of specific backgrounds, or even to kind of switch around how your board operates, what's expected of your board. There's multiple things that our consultants can look at in our board recruitment grant.
Great. And then someone else asked if they understand that the IT projects are competitive, but what about the other practices? I would recommend, if you have questions about the competitiveness of any particular grant, that you check in with your local program office, because each office has a different set of factors that they're looking at for each grant round, and they'll be able to give you a better sense of how competitive each practice area or project is.
And we have the contact information listed on one of these slides coming up, so you'll be able to write those down for each office as well.
Great. So as we were pausing, we're getting some questions about eligibility, and that is a perfect segue because that is the next section that we are going to cover right now, and so hopefully we'll cover those questions that people are coming up with.
Okay, so client selection here, client or grantee selection, as I said. The first, Chris, if you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Too many questions coming in now.
Yes.
So the application assessment. As we look at these applications that come in initially at our deadline, we look at 4 core factors. Does the nonprofit meet our basic eligibility requirements, which we'll go over? Does our solution, does Taproot's solution fit your need? Does the organization have strong leadership in place to implement the grant deliverables? And will this project ultimately have an impact on the organization and then therefore have an impact in our community? So moving on to the basic eligibility, which I know a lot of you might have had questions about. So these factors are what make up those requirements. Your organization must be a 501c3 or be fiscally sponsored by or a project of a 501c3 or be a public school. Your organization must have at least 3 full-time employees, but for most of our human resources grants, you must have 8. And then your organization also must have a budget of over $350,000. Now, if you are a project or fiscally sponsored by a 501c3, your entity still must have 3 full-time employees and a budget of $350,000. So I wanted to point that out there. And I receive a lot of questions regarding, why these are in place, specifically, the size and the budget. And the basic answer of that is that while our grants are really fun and they're definitely beneficial, they are hard work. So we want to make sure that you and your team have adequate resources to work with a team of, 5 to 7 consultants for 6 months. Another requirement is that you must work within our 5 issue areas of arts, education, environment, health, and social services, and that you must be located, or your headquarters must be located in one of our 5 cities, as we mentioned earlier. So San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, NYC, and DC. Now, each of these cities have specific counties that they work in. So for instance, here in San Francisco, we work in Marin County, but we actually don't work as far as Sonoma. So all of those counties are actually listed on our website on those pages. And then finally, some of our grants require that you have a board-ratified strategic plan in process, which Chris will talk a little bit more about those specific ones.
Yeah, so some of our grants do require having a strategic plan in place, and I just put the ones up that we recommend having a strategic plan in place: the strategic scorecard, program measurement, board recruitment service grant, key messaging and brand strategy, and visual identity and brand strategy. This isn't to say that having a strong strategic plan won't benefit your organization in the application process, making you a more competitive organization. But there are certain grants that we do require having this in place because really we want to make sure that when the consultants join your organization to start working on the project, they really have a good sense of strategically where your organization is going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. So, of course, it's very important to have that strategic plan in place for the strategic scorecard. But for some of these, other grants, we really do want to have a sense of where your organization's headed and have that published somewhere for our consultants to look at. If you have any questions about, the timing of your strategic plan, generally we would like the, strategic plan to be up and in place, board ratified by the time that you apply. But if you have any questions about timing, feel free to reach out to your local program manager. All right, so in addition to the basic eligibility requirements, we do look at the proposal that your organization submits. The proposal covers a lot of different areas, including the project's fit with your strategic direction, as well as the resources, the impact of the project, and several other areas. For submitting a strong proposal, we recommend clearly articulating what the organization's need is for the service grant. So really determining, what the service is and how it fits within your organization's needs. We want to make sure that it's a good fit. And then we want you to describe how you'll maintain the service grant over time. Instead of investing money to pay for a service, we are investing volunteer hours. We want to make sure that they're well spent and that whatever you get out of the process will help your organization in the future. For example, if you are applying for an annual report project, how do you plan to print that annual report? And do you plan to reuse that as a template in the future? Or maybe in the case of a performance management system, how do you plan to implement the performance management system with your employees? It's also very important to clearly communicate that there has been discussion among leadership, both in the board and the executive team of your organization, about the service grant and that everyone is bought into the process. That really ensures that the project will be successful if your organization is fully bought in. And then demonstrating that it's part of your strategic priorities or your strategic plan if you have one. Making those connections really helps us see the context in which your organization is applying for the grant and really making sure that we can fulfill the needs of your organization. And then, of course, the number one tip is taking full advantage of Taproot program staff. Each office has a program manager or associate program manager that is there to designated to help nonprofits through the application process. So if you have questions about your eligibility or questions about which is the best service grant or just about your proposal in general, we're happy to work with you through the process to make sure that you have a strong proposal. So finally, the final thing that we really look at is making sure that there is a full team at your organization who would be able to work closely with our consultants. So on every project, we require that a executive sponsor is involved. So this is typically the executive director of the organization. Sometimes at larger organizations, it's someone in the executive team. And this person serves as the key final decision maker, providing feedback at the key milestone meetings that happen throughout the project. And they have a close relationship with the leader of the pro bono consulting team. All of our projects also require having a designated project manager or day-to-day contact that would help schedule the meetings, coordinate communications between the client and the consulting team. And then they're also ensuring that feedback is clearly communicated between the client and the nonprofit, and the consulting team. They work closely with the consulting project manager as well. And then some of our projects require additional staff members from your organization or volunteers. And we ask that it's about a team of 5 at the maximum. But we want to make sure that, again, you have the key stakeholders in the room that can work closely on a regular basis with the pro bono consultants. So these are people that are located in the metropolitan area in which you apply for a service grant and are able to attend these key meetings on a consistent basis. All right, so now we're going to go into the grant-making process. And there's a few more questions that came up about eligibility, and we're going to make sure that we circle back at the end and answer any questions that came up. So for the upcoming submission deadline, it's not going to be on March 1st, just because that's a weekend, and we don't want you guys working on an application on a Saturday. So all the cities have chosen their own deadline, so this would be end of business on the day of. So for example, in Chicago, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, or San Francisco, it would be in the evening of March 3rd. New York is March 4th, and then Washington, D.C. is March 5th. We do have quarterly grant cycles, so this is one of the 4 quarters in which you could apply. The next applications following the March deadline will be June, then September, and then December. And we do that on an ongoing basis. Yeah, that's how it works moving forward. To access the application, you can go onto our website, taprootfoundation.org. And after we close out today, I will be doing a demonstration very soon.
So this is our grant-making timeline. As Chris just mentioned, we all have, each of our offices has a different deadline for the application to come in. And, as we come up, as the applications come in, there are quite a few steps that then take place between that application deadline and the project kickoff. So we as a team review the applications. Then we invite the strongest applications in to interview. We'll then send out a letter of intent to those we intend to award grants to. For those nonprofits that receive an LOI, they must attend an orientation in person with the rest of the awarded nonprofits. And that's usually held at local Taproot offices. And then the account director, which is the lead consultant on your team, will be placed, and they will go ahead and set up a site visit with you. And during this site visit is actually when the project becomes an official grant, as the account director is the one who signs off on the service grant agreement. So from there, from March until May is what happens before the project kickoff. So this is our grant-making timeline. So now let's take a look at the project timeline. So while you might have heard that our projects are, about 6 months long, there's a good 3 months of preparation by Taproot, our consultants, and you before we get to the good parts. So I mentioned the orientation and the site visit just a second ago, and these are during what we call our stage 0. Also during this time, after the account director and you sign the service grant agreement, the account director will staff the rest of the consultants on his or her team, and then they will all get together for an internal kickoff meeting so that the consultants can all meet each other prior. The account director can update the consultants on everything they know about your organization and the project before meeting with you and your entire team at the kickoff. So from the kickoff to the assessment and closing, that's when the project is about 6 months. That's when you'll have, during each of these stages, each of these milestones, there will be an in-person on-site meeting with your whole team and the whole consultant team, and then ending with, hopefully, a great celebration at the end. Chris, were you doing decision-making factors?
Yeah, sorry, I had myself on mute there as I was answering questions. So finally, the decision-making factors that we look at. Just to give you a sense of what Taproot program managers are looking at as we go through those meetings to determine which organizations we move forward with. We, of course, look at the application assessment. So we're looking at the strength of the application, as well as if your organization comes in for an interview, the strength of the interview to ensure that the service really fits the needs and that your organization is in a good position to benefit from the grant. We are also looking at pro bono consultant supply. Sometimes it is the case that there are not enough consultants to match the need of the nonprofit community in a specific grant round. So that makes the process a little bit more competitive. And then finally, we also look at funding. Taproot works on a sponsorship model, and that means that most of the service grants that we offer are sponsored by a partner organization. So that's either a private foundation, a company, or a donor. And in certain cases, certain opportunities are set aside for organizations that meet a specific profile, work in a specific issue area, or work directly with one of our partner foundations. So that can affect the competitiveness of your application, as if you are applying for an unrestricted opportunity, it may be more competitive. The best way to find out more about your organization's eligibility in this area, or how competitive it will be, is to contact your local Taproot office and just get a sense of who your who you currently serve and who your foundation partners are, to make sure that you're going to have a competitive application as you go through the process. So that's the key decision-making factors. And now that we're kind of coming to a close, I wanted to, of course, share the city contacts that are in each of our locations, San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and DC. Feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to answer questions that you might have about eligibility, the grant-making process, or services, anything. We'll follow up with you. And I also wanted to open up to questions now. So feel free to use the chat function. I'm going to go through a couple of past questions that were asked as we were speaking, and we're going to field those questions now. First up, Meg, if I can put you on the spot. Someone is asking, if they're awarded the annual report grant, how many hours will the nonprofit staff have to put into the process? I'd say on a weekly basis. And I think if you could answer this question more generally, that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So we do allot a certain amount of hours for each particular role, so that executive sponsor, the day-to-day contact. And while it will change from week to week, depending on where you're at in the process, we usually say that you can expect the executive director to put in about 10 to 15 hours total for the course of the project. The day-to-day contacts at on your team will definitely spend most of the time working on it, scheduling meetings and making sure getting approval to the consultants, and that's typically 3 to 5 hours per week. The day-to-day contact and executive sponsor have to be different people, so keep that in mind as well. And then if the annual report has someone different who is, the copywriter at your organization or the person who houses most of the language, they might put in about 20 hours total over the course of the grant.
And another question someone had about the strategic planning prep grant. They asked if we provide assistance actually writing the strategic plan.
Yeah, so for this one, and I see that one, some of our grants, yes, require a strategic plan in place. The strategic planning prep grant does not require a strategic plan in place. And we actually do not assist in writing that strategic plan. The name of this grant is a little bit confusing in that sense, so I definitely understand. But the final deliverables of this grant actually are a SWOT analysis, so a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats report. And hopefully that'll give you, more informed choices when updating or writing a new strategic plan. It'll hopefully give you, a more detailed context for planning, so not just, hunches, but actual facts and where you can move forward. And then, of course, you'll have all of this, data and analysis. So you'll hopefully have, not only the raw data, but the insight from these strategic consultants on where and how you can move forward. So I hope that answers that question.
That's very helpful. So someone asked what the average ratio of applicants to grants awarded is, and they say they know it depends. Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say that we are able to award, at least in Chicago, about half of the applications moving forward. I think it depends in the market. What would you say in the Bay Area?
Yeah, the Bay Area is a little less. So for instance, this past grant round, we received over 45 applications. We brought in half of those for interviews, so we brought in about 24 for interviews, and then from there, we awarded 13 projects. So it's a bit more competitive. We in the Bay Area also offer, calls along with every office, so you can get a sense of, what your eligibility and we'll help you try to write, a stronger application to work for your goals. So yeah, our office is a little bit less than half for sure.
Okay. And I would like to say that when it comes to the interview process, if Taproot does invite your organization to participate in an interview following the application process, it's because we feel that there's a strong potential that your organization could move forward with the project. So we're very confident in the project, though there are some additional factors we need to look at before awarding it. Someone also asked if there's any reporting requirements for the nonprofit following the grant. And Taproot does a couple follow-up procedures after we've completed the grant. And that includes a conversation with a program manager to determine what worked well and what the challenges and opportunities were in the project. And then we also survey all of the nonprofit team members, as well as, at the close of the project, as well as 9 to 12 months following. So we're always trying to improve our services, our templates, our documents, and we use that information and really appreciate nonprofit feedback as we seek to improve our projects moving forward. So I think we've covered all the questions. So we got one more, and then I'm going to go into the live demonstration. Someone asked if out of all the awarded grants, how many tend to be past grantees versus new applicants? I can share in Chicago. I think generally we really value our continued relationships with nonprofits. So if an organization has worked with us before and we've had a really good experience with them, we are excited to accept applications from grantees that have worked with us in the past. I'd say in Chicago, I've actually done the math recently, and it's about 35% of any given grant round is return applicants, so about a third of our projects. Meg, do you have a different number?
Yeah, I would say around 20 to 30% sounds accurate. I do want to stress, though, that of course we said in our decision-making processes, the biggest thing for Taproot really is that need and fit. So a lot of return grantees, they have a strong ask because they know exactly how much resources to put to the project. They know how the process goes. So again, really, if you're not a return grantee, I would definitely stress taking advantage of your local office and having a conversation with how you and your organization specifically can, be helped to buy one of our service grants. So really understanding the process is super helpful for us to look over as we're going through application and interview decisions.
Great. And so everyone who attended the webinar today, thank you so much for joining. We will send you a PDF document of this presentation. A couple people have asked for that. And then we're actually trying to publish this webinar on YouTube. So we are going to do our best to do that as well. We'll follow up with you however we're able to publish it. So you can share that with your colleagues who weren't able to attend the presentation or any other organizations that you think might be able to use Taproot as a resource. So thank you everyone for joining today. We really appreciated having some great questions going on here. We'll follow up with you, and of course, feel free to reach out to your local program manager based on your location. So either Meg, myself, Barry, Ali, or Lola would be happy to answer any of your questions. So as we close out, I am going to stay on and do a live demonstration of the website, just so you can get a sense of what applying for a grant looks like. And that's just going to take about 5 minutes. So for those of you who were able to join and want to drop off now, that's totally fine. Thank you for joining, and have a great day. For those who want to stay and watch the live demonstration, I'm going to do that right now.